Hello and welcome to another episode of The Last Video Store. My name is Alexei. I am your host, and on this show I talk to cool and interesting people about their favorite movies, and yes, we do so in the style of an old school video store rental combo. And joining me in The Last Video Store today is someone I've been very excited to have on this podcast, and we've been very lucky on this show this year to talk to some of the filmmakers behind my favorite films of the year 2025. And today we have got Michael Shanks, the director of the brilliant new horror film Together that stars Franco and Alison Brie. The film Together features a plot that I will be summarizing thusly that I found on the internet. Years into their relationship, a couple find themselves at a crossroads as they move to the country, abandoning all that is familiar in their lives except each other. With tensions already flaring, a nightmarish encounter with a mysterious, unnatural force threatens to corrupt their lives, their love, and their flesh. Now that is such a tantalizing summary here. I found this to be an immensely exciting film that has a tone that is just that little bit comedy forward, but not in a way that feels like an exchange between how tensions are relieved, like most blends of the genres of horror and comedy, or comedy horror, if you will. Here it feels as if the comedy comes naturally, informing the more relationship-based story at the core, and from there it enhances every other aspect of Michael Shanks' very clever film. This is such a fun exchange with Michael here on the podcast today. In particular, right at the end of the episode, he kind of inches out this little tidbit about not just the making of the film, but his own little nod to Steven Spielberg, who I would say is maybe the most famous filmmaker that has ever lived. But this is such a great chat. I'm a big fan of Michael, going all the way back to his YouTube shorts and his series, Wizards of Aus. If you haven't seen Wizards of Aus, it stars so many of our favorite Australian comedians and is such a funny take on fantasy and comedy mixing together for something so irreverent and fun. He was on YouTube for years as timtimfed. You know, I've chatted to Michael a few times over the years, but this was such a fun chat. I'm very excited for you to hear it. Stick around genuinely right to the very end. He said something just before we said goodbye to each other that, I don't know, I think that hopefully it's something that you find out more filmmakers do. We're about to get into our chat with Michael Shanks, the director of Together, but what we do on this show is he's going to come into the video store, he's going to pick up a new release film, two of his all-time favorites from the weekly section of the store, and then I, as the clerk here at the Last Video Store, will give him a staff pick recommendation based on his taste, based on his conversation, probably based on every single thing I've ever known about this guy. So let's get straight into it. Here's our chat with the director and writer of Together, Michael Shanks.
The Last Video Store.
Look who I caught wandering around the horror section of our video store here. It is Michael Shanks. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here in this beautiful video store.
Oh, it's one of the most beautiful places on planet Earth, and heck, even a few other planets we've yet to discover.
Well, didn't they just discover a new planet like this week? Like, so there's one that's been hiding behind Pluto this whole time. That's what we're here to talk about.
This is the first time hearing about this, and you've shocked me.
Yeah, new planet Pluto discovered. Pluto's not even a planet anymore. A cosmic fossil at the edge of our solar system in the orbit of Pluto. There you go.
Wow, I feel threatened by learning this information.
Yeah.
I feel like we're about to be invaded.
Yeah, it's strange, like, learning information on, like, a live stream or, like, a podcast. I remember I was on a live stream with some podcasting friends when Sean Connery died. It's like, how do you react to that whilst you're in the middle of a game of phantasmophobia or whatever it's called?
Another fossil from another time as well.
Exactly.
Well, Michael, I've been dying to get you in here, and I think of you as like such one of the great film lovers from Australia. Take me back, babe. Take me back to your video stores of past, the ones you grew up with.
The video store of past that comes most to mind is the Newport Video Easy. There was also I was born initially in Christchurch, New Zealand. There was definitely a Blockbuster there that I would go to in Christchurch. But the Newport Video Easy in Melbourne, just my main memory of it was it had the squeakiest floor, like the creakiest floor. Like you couldn't take a step. It was like bouncy and springy. It was
Mhm.
like they had made a makeshift like skate park and then just like put a carpet over it. It was awful. But it was like, you know, those halcyon days of being a teenager with like me and, you know, a couple of other dorks just like would go there on the weekend and get it was always like the 5 weekly deal, and you just go and
Mm.
get like 5 weeklies, maybe a new release, and you just, you know, go home and like watch them and drink like LA Ice or whatever.
Wow, no one has yet to mention the hallowed words of LA Ice here on
LA
this
Ice.
podcast. I think it gives you a different sugar high than any other soda I've ever
Oh
had.
yeah, it gives you that LA Ice, that coolness. Another another kind of like thing that comes to mind is when I first moved to Australia. My older sister and I, you know, we didn't have any friends yet because we kind of just moved. I would have been like 11. And we would go and we would just hire movies and like rewatch them. Would get new releases, and I just remember watching Scary Movie 2 and immediately just rewatching Scary Movie 2 with my sister. And we did the same with Dude, Where's My Car? It was like that era, and we just ate it up. We just loved it.
That is such a core memory for me as well. Getting Scary Movie 2 from the video store on VHS. It would be one of the hardest times I've ever laughed in my life.
It was like upsetting to me as well. Like I was too young for some of the jokes, and it was kind of not like scary, but just like there was stuff about like sex that I didn't understand yet, and maybe still don't, and it like freaked me out.
Yeah, I was like, what is that kind of weird liquid goo that's coming out of this guy?
Yeah, exactly. He sure seems to have a lot of it.
Yeah, is that normal? Is that something, or is that part of the horror?
Yeah, and the Scary Movie 2, I think was the actor called Chris Elliott with the "take you with my strong hand" kind of character. It's just so revolting.
I think that infected my entire school. Was like, take my strong hand became like, you know, part of the culture of my primary school. Well, I want to get into the stuff with you, but I remember the first thing I saw from you. I was trying to remember like the first work I saw from you, and it was the Max Payne video
That's so
that you
funny.
made like what 15 years ago.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, I used to like make like funny YouTube video game parodies. Yeah, the Max Payne one is actually probably one of the better ones of that very cringe period of my life.
But it was like to me, it was like such an accurate translation of what that video game was doing, enhanced with comedy, was so much of like your falling in love with film through even making stuff, or was it more through like this kind of discovery of genre? Because so much of your work feels like so indebted into genre, even in those early days.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Like I was, you know, completely infected with love of film since I was a kid. And I think part of that was when I was in Christchurch before I moved to Australia. Like I lived on like a farm. Like I was pretty isolated. Like all I sort of had to do was like watch, you know, Stargate on the VHS tape that I'd recorded it off TV, and like and like play Nintendo. So those were kind of the things that would keep me going, because I didn't really have like neighbors or like the neighborhood gang to kind of go hang out with. But then when I kind of started making things, the whenever I would make even just like a YouTube video, even like a stupid sketch like that Max Payne thing, what I was always trying to do was like learn a sort of a new technical skill. And with that, we had access to a camera that had I had this window where I had access to a camera that shot really high frame rate, so we could shoot slow motion stuff. And I was like, cool, I can think of a fun way to shoot a bunch of slow-mo with a Max Payne thing. Max Payne 3 had just come out, and Max Payne 3's visual language is really ripping off like Tony Scott. Like Max Payne 3 is doing all this like man on fire, sort of like light bleeds and leaks and weird editing tricks. And so
Very domino coded.
Sorry?
Very domino coded.
Oh yeah, my God, it's like super domino coded. That like it was, you know, every time I put something on YouTube, it wasn't just because like I want to be a sketch comedy guy or something. It was just like, how do I, you know, sit at my computer and make something look like a Tony Scott film? Like that's kind of where all these things came from. Like I did a sketch about this that like transition in Jason Bourne films where like, you know, he'll walk behind a car and he'll like disappear, and I just like milked the idea of that into an absurd degree. But that was like, oh cool, if I make that sketch, I can kind of like play around with like surveillance, like spy espionage aesthetics, and shot on a lot of like roving kind of zoom lenses and treated everything to be all blue. Like that's always kind of a fun way to kind of explore something.
Well, I'm going to say this, Michael. You've got free reign of the store today. You can wander in any section, pick up a few movies. Come on back. We'll talk about some new films, some old films, and heck, maybe some films you have never heard of. Who knows?
Oh, we'll see.
New release.
Well, Michael, you've got a new release film sitting atop your pile here. I'm really doing a lot of theater of the mind work with you today.
No, it's great. I've been walking up and down the creaky floors of this video store, and I found it.
We installed a little extra bounce for you as well to take you all the way back to your childhood days. But you've got a new release film here, and I'm looking at this, and it says, what the heck, from writer-director Michael Shanks? You've got, from our horror section, the movie Together.
Horror.
Yeah, spooky. It's crazy. I didn't know that I'd made this, but here it is.
Yes, it's being revealed here today. You've directed this film.
What the heck?
I absolutely love this film. I saw it at the Sydney Film Festival for its giant opening night session. And it was just such a ripper ride to see, with such a big crowd being so on board with it. I think what really has been resonating with people is this personal filmmaking as it's channeled through genre. Can you talk about like the genesis of this film and I guess like the idea of finding a way to translate personal stories through that language of genre?
Yeah, like the kind of genesis of this story was sort of the zoomed out high premise concept of like, hey, what if a couple that was so that lives were already so enmeshed, already so intertwined, what if we kind of took that and just amped it up into sort of like a visceral body horror space where you're not just sharing a life with somebody? What if you begin to share flesh with them, for example? I kind of was sort of breaking that story out. I never thought I would write something kind of personal or based on my real life. Like, you know, I'm more comfortable doing Max Payne video game parodies. Like everything I've done in the past has been like so ironic and so like comedic, but the kind of more of myself I put into this story whilst writing it, just like the better the script got because it became more specific and therefore less generic. And you know, from like a personal point of view, I've been in my relationship for over 16 years. I met my partner at schoolies, so I haven't been an adult without her in my life, and vice versa. And now, you know, we live together and we have the same friends and we eat the same food, we breathe the same air. Like I certainly got to a point where I didn't know where I end and she begins, like the Radiohead song. And I was kind of like, okay, cool, that's kind of a good jumping off point for this. And similarly, kind of with the main character as well. Like at the time, I was like getting, you know, it's like kind of pathetic to say, but I was like, when I started kind of making films, like it was kind of going well, particularly like for my age. Like I invested far too much in the Wunderkind like identity, and then as I was getting towards my late 30s and a couple of projects didn't get up, I was like, oh no, am I that guy? Am I that like guy who's still like wanting to be, say, an actor, and everybody behind his back is saying he needs to give this up? And so I kind of like based a lot of the main character where we meet Dave's character in the film on that. Like you can see in my background, I've got instruments and, you know, I had some ambitions as a musician earlier on and kind of released some stuff and then just kind of abandoned that. And we kind of meet Dave's character again, sort of somebody who kind of had, there's inklings that he had success in the past and couldn't quite capitalize on it. And now he's getting a bit long in the tooth and, you know, he was this sort of like really unflattering standard of who I was worried that I was, this kind of guy who needs to put his like artistic ambition bullshit to the side and maybe realize that actually what's great in my life is that I have this beautiful partner that I love. And if I could just sort out my own shit, maybe we could have a go at this.
Can you talk about the finding the tone for that? Because what I really appreciated as well was that it's not quite a horror comedy. The horror, everything's grounded in horror and relationship drama, but it's very comedy forward in the way that it kind of speaks to its audience. Can you talk about like finding that tone or that balance?
Well, like when I sat down to write it, I thought I'm going to write Hereditary. I'm going to write a harrowing, nasty horror movie. But kind of the more and more I got into the premise, I just sort of got out of my own way. And like, you know, my background is in comedy, that it just felt like as the premise gets more and more insane, it felt more natural to me to kind of lean into like, oh, that would also kind of be funny. Like I agree that I don't think of this film as a horror comedy, which is a genre that I think very, very rarely works. But Kind of the more the film goes on, the kind of crazier it gets. And I was just really happy to lean into that stuff. Also, in terms of things like, if I were in the situation, I would be incompetent. Like, I'm not good at things. And so I thought it was kind of more true to life to have the characters kind of fumble their way through the situation. Not always to just be funny, but just because I think it's kind of more realistic.
I think the other thing about this film that makes it so unique is I genuinely can't imagine this film possibly being made without a real life couple at the center. Just for hours, they'd have to be glued together and really genuinely stuck to each other. Can you talk about getting Dave Franco and Alison Brie on board? And then I guess even the process of like having to, I guess, prostheticize them together.
Yeah, it was crazy. Well, the way that the kind of film came together is that, like, I wrote it years ago, and we had.
I am going to cut out you making that little noise, so it sounds like you genuinely said that.
Yeah, I'm just like really pleased as punch with myself. It was a script that I wrote years ago, and there were other actors attached at certain points, so we just weren't able to kind of get the financing up. And I wrote a different, this is kind of like the backstory of like, how does a nobody filmmaker in Australia get a first feature with these kind of big names? And it's, I'd written a different script that was on a thing called The Blacklist. Any like film writer savvy people might know what that is. It's a little inside baseball, but it's a list of the best quote unquote unproduced screenplays of that year, as voted on by studio heads and execs and people who like read scripts and decide what gets made and what doesn't. And so I wrote this other script that got on that list. And once I was on that list, people kind of were like, who is this guy? What's going on? Including my own agents who had possibly forgotten that they'd repped me. And one of them was like, oh, maybe you're quite good. You should, why don't I see you up with a meeting with Dave? I think you and Dave would get on. And so I just met Dave Franco on a general meeting. And we were just kind of chatting. And I knew he liked horror because he made The Rental, which I'd really liked. And I said like, hey, by the way, man, I've got the script. If you wouldn't mind, see what you think of it. And, I kind of gave it to him thinking maybe this is more of like a writing sample, that he'd be like, oh, cool, I need a writer for something. But instead, yeah, he read it. He loved it, gave it to Alison, his wife, and she loved it. And he said, yeah, I think this is the one we should do together. And like a couple of days later, I was on a Zoom with both of them. And we were just like, great. They got it. I got them. And it kind of came together quite quickly from that point. But in terms of the other part of the question, sorry, I'm just like vomiting words here, but yeah.
No. I love vomit.
Okay, yes.
I like that kind of
It's
stuff.
like I'm in audition. We couldn't. I don't think we could have done this without a married couple at the center of it, or partners in the center of it, because for the ambition of this script, we're really low budget. So we had, on some levels, we only had like 21 days to shoot the movie, and we should have had double that, but we had to make it work. And on just like a really fundamental level, the fact that our cast were partners meant that each night they could go home and run lines together. They were really comfortable with each other. Like they had a sort of shorthand interpersonally that just meant that like they were so slick, and we didn't have time to do heaps of takes of things. So it was great that they would just kind of nail it straight up. And, more to the point, as you say, like there is an emotional intimacy, but also a physical intimacy in the film. And we had like a whole day where Dave and Alison basically had to be fully nude, just like standing together for the whole day. And it's like, oh, okay, that would have been tricky if they weren't together. We have, sex scenes, and we have scenes where via prosthetics, they're literally, melded together. And we didn't have the budget to redo our prosthetics. And a thing that I've learned now, having worked with prosthetics, is they denigrate throughout the day. Like you want to shoot your prosthetics like as soon as they're applied, because they fall apart so quickly and so easily, just under like heat and any motion. They just kind of start to really fall apart. But we didn't have the budget to reapply prosthetics. So when they were kind of melded together, that's like, cool, you're sealed. That's it. We can't do this again. So when you need to pee and poop, you need to go pee and poop together. And you could never ask actors to do that. But they sort of were like, that's what we need to do? Absolutely, no worries. Thankfully, that all worked out well. Because I even just imagine if they didn't get on. If you cast like, your male and female lead, and they just like don't have chemistry, they don't like each other, would have been hell. I can't imagine that.
Can you talk to us more about like finding the designs for, I guess, the unholy creations that you have in this film?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I have uh, one of kind of my like driving factors when like embarking on a project is wanting to make kind of visuals that I've never seen before, and therefore hopefully the audience hasn't. So when I was writing this, I wrote like as many set pieces in as I could. I'm like, this is a one and done premise. I want to make sure that there's like 10 crazy set pieces that you can only do with this premise, and then we finish the movie, and that's that premise kind of put to bed. And it was amazing getting to work with like concept artists. Like there's a guy named Dan Peacock who's a UK concept artist that I'm like a huge fan of just from following him on Twitter over the years. And he kind of does these drawings that almost the kind of monstrous art, but it also feels like it's been like shot by like trail cams. Like it's all like lit as though there's like a flash right behind the camera. And I really love found footage films, and I really love that aesthetic. So it was really cool to kind of see him out, and he did some of our early concept art, and we had some an Australian artist, Seth Justice, do some more concept art. I mean, it's just awesome. Like I have a background in visual effects, but I have no background whatsoever in prosthetics. So getting to actually have all this practical stuff be made, I mean, you can see it here, but I've still got Dave Franco mounted on my office wall.
Oh my gosh.
Which is good fun. That is an incredibly realistic Dave Franco bust.
Yeah.
Is on screen for 1 second of the movie.
Yeah.
Like 1 second.
Well, it looks beautiful mounted on the wall there.
Yeah, it's great. And I've got a bunch of other prosthetics here, but they're too spoilery to show. What was fun, I actually got to get prosthetic in the movie. Like I got my head kind of sculpted for a thing that I was going to say that was a lot of fun. Actually, that's not true. It was extremely claustrophobic. I had a panic attack whilst like covered and sealed, entombed in goo. But you got to suffer for your art.
Exactly, and probably be quite hard to direct while having a panic attack while encased in the, a more mucked up version of one's own head.
Yeah, it was quite an embarrassing experience. Like, because they're just doing kind of like my head and my shoulders. I was like, oh god, I don't think I have to take my shirt off in front of all the crew that are here. And then I wrote on a piece of, then they were like, oh, you need to take your shirt off, but don't worry, we'll wrap you in a garbage bag. So then I'm just sitting there like swelling out of this garbage bag, completely encased in goo. And I'm starting to have a panic attack. And I write on the notes, because you can't talk. They give me a little notepad. I just said, extremely hot. And I could just hear them say, oh, okay, you're too hot. That's fine. Rip the garbage bag off him. So then they rip the garbage. And I'm just sitting there with my fat little pot belly out. It's like, we've got interns shooting behind the scenes footage. I'm like, please never release this footage.
Please don't put this on a DVD, please. One thing before we move on to your other picks, I really appreciated the music and the score for this. This great soundtrack of like mixtape found music as well, of course. But the score itself, I think, enhances so much of both the horror and finding that kind of not comedic lightness, but a little bit of that juxtaposition. It plays so nicely. And can you tell me about, I guess, the composition of that score and finding the right sound for this film?
Yeah, it was really important to me. Like I have a musical background as well. This is the first thing I've done where I haven't done the score myself. And I was never going to be skilled enough to do a score for something on this level. And we worked with a composer called Cornel Wilczek, who was just amazing. He did an amazing job, but also like a lot of my references and some of the kind of temp scorey stuff that I was using wasn't always film score or classical. Some of it was like, I like the tone of this guitar from this like indie rock record from 2005. And every time that would come up, he'd be like, oh yeah, I actually recorded that album. Or like he just had like every reference I had, like I referenced like some tacky band like Dream Theater. And he's like, yeah, I actually toured with Mike Portnoy, the drummer from, and like he just has a story about like every single person. Which was great. But the main kind of musical direction I gave him was there's a thing in music called glissando, which basically means sort of like rather than like da da da, going like nah, like kind of sliding, bending pitches. Like a really famous glissando is like the THX sound, where you've got some strings up high and strings down low, and they just kind of curve towards each other. And because this is a film about kind of people that, are individuals kind of losing their individuality and kind of like blending or flowing into different forms, I was like, I think that could be really cool as the main musical motif. And Cornell really took that and ran with it. Like even just in the opening cue, there's strings just sliding over the place in contrary motion. And it's this really, it's a thing that isn't used that much in scores. There's a bit in Michael Levi's score for, Jackie, which I think is really good. But I think
the Pablo Larraín film.
It's Yeah, and he took that and ran with it and just did a great job. I'm really, really proud of it. And in terms of like the soundtrack, like the kind of diegetic music in the film, without getting spoilery, there is one needle drop in the film that was extremely difficult to get, extremely
Really?
fundamental to the film, and it cost
Mm-hmm.
our entire music budget to get 60
No.
seconds of that song. So like that's all we got, and it was our entire music budget. So literally every other piece of music in the movie is crappy songs from my old band or like my friends' bands, and just being like, please give us your friend. Can I have a song of yours for free, please? You'll be in the credits. You'll get some APRA AMCOS royalty money. But everybody was very happy to contribute some stuff. So that was that.
Can I ask how much that song did cost?
I think it was something like, it was definitely over $100,000. It's somewhere between 1 and 200 grand, I think.
Wow, money well spent though.
Oh my God,
it's like it's the talk about moment of the film.
Well, and there was no backup. Like the producers were always like, well, we don't know if we're going to be able to get it. So like, come up with some backups. And I do have a Spotify playlist somewhere, but like,
Of what the backups were?
Robert Palmer's "Let's Stick Together" is not going to do. It's as on the nose, but it's not tonally quite right.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you got it there in the end. I think one thing I want to ask you before we move on to the next bit actually is you're currently in Australia. That's how you've been able to wander into the last video store, which is magically in Australia. Yeah. You've been showing this film here in your home country. What's it been like showing it to friends, family, people that you know, and just Australian audiences?
It's been amazing. Like our first screening to an audience was at Sundance, was our like premiere. So that was like super surreal and crazy. And I've been really lucky now to kind of see it in a couple places at different film festivals in the States and, in Italy and in Mexico. And the Sydney Film Festival screening though was like the most fun. Like it was lovely having kind of a home crowd there, and it was this is the country this is an Australian film. We have American leads, but it's absolutely an Australian film. So to watch it in front of like industry peers, I mean, I hasten to call them peers because I'm like pretty isolated, but it was like cool. And we've just done 2 screenings this week in Melbourne, which is my hometown, and we did the Cinema Nova, which was great. And then we did the Sun Theatre 2 nights ago, which is my like local the cinema I've been going to since I was a kid in Yarraville. Yeah. And that was fun, but it was like there was a lot of friends and family there, which is great. But like my mum, who is in her late 60s, brought her bridge club along, and that was lovely to meet some of the bridge club. This wheeling out this bag of bones just to come and watch this movie that they will almost certainly hate. But that was sweet.
They might have loved the "Let's Stick Together" cut.
Yeah, they would have
more up there, Ali.
More from their, not even their youths, their middle age,
from their prime, I guess. But what were their reactions to the film? Because you don't associate a bridge club really going to go see this film.
Well, their reactions will remain a mystery because the film was late enough that by the time I finished the Q&A afterwards, they had all gone. Also, Mum said, "Oh, Michael, this is the bridge club. And now I invited more, and more would have come, but it's Wednesday, and Wednesday is bridge night. So most of them have gone to play bridge." Okay, great. Thanks for telling me that, Mum.
Well, if they liked it, hopefully we can give them a few more recommendations of films in the same ilk that they might enjoy and watch it together as a bridge club again.
Absolutely, yeah, bridge club movie night.
Weekly.
Well, let's get into some of your weekly choices as well here, because you've got a lovely little stack of films that I'm just dying to get to this one right in there. And I actually don't know what section of the store you would have picked this film up from. Where were you wandering? It's quite a good genre blend here. I don't know where we would actually place it. Where did you find it?
I suppose this first one's probably from, if it's the one we're thinking of, science fiction.
Okay,
probably,
yeah,
right?
I think it's from the sci-fi section. Yeah, I think so.
It could be under romance, drama being such a great genre. That's one thing my media teacher in year 12 would always, impress upon me. There's no such, drama isn't a genre. It's not a genre. I don't quite know if I agree with that, but
it's a feeling.
Yeah, it's a handy shortcut. Like, you know what you're talking about, but...
Please introduce the film. What's the title?
The title is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Sci-fi.
And this is a beautiful film. This is the one that I usually use as my reference point for what American surrealism can really do, which is get a small idea or a feeling and translate it into a visual metaphor that really translates well. Can you talk about finding this film for the first time?
I actually studied it in like English literature in year 10 or 11. And it just blew my mind. But it was when I rediscovered it a little later than in life. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience with a film. Like once you've kind of gone through something in your real life that resonates with a film, and you kind of come back to it, and it works so much more. And I just remember loving this film as a teenager as more of like, wow, it's so clever, it's so creative, and I was so in love with the style of it. And then I watched it again. This is gonna sound a little emo, but I watched it again after I'd fallen in love, and it just broke me, and I just couldn't stop crying at the end. And I just found it so beautiful, and it's kind of my favorite. It's one of my favorite films of all time because it has this emotional depth and these incredible observations about life and relationships and the turbulence of being in love, as well as, I mean, I love the ending of it. The kind of like, we're just going to hurt each other again, and so who cares? Like, you know, that's what you sign up for. But at the same time, it's one of the most visually dynamic and insane movies I've ever seen. And, you know, I think one of the things that really inspired me to become a filmmaker was kind of like the 90s music video era, like Chris Cunningham and Michel Gondry, who directs the hell out of this movie. And this just has like 30 amazing music video style, like visual concepts throughout it. I love films that you just watch and you go like, this would have taken so much effort, and you can see that, and it just makes my brain go like, how'd they do that? How'd they do this? How'd they do that? But whilst you're processing all that, you're also just like getting this heart aching relationship.
You just awoke probably the most video store thing for me, which was when I did work in a video store, that was my go-to thing to put on, was those director's collection of music videos.
Hell yeah.
In particular, the Michel Gondry one, and watching all his commercials, the same as Spike Jonze one. But I think that was my absolute favorite thing to watch while I'm sitting behind the counter. So I'll put those in your little box as well.
Oh, thank you. It's my dream is to like host Rage one day, if that still has hosts, because I just want to like, here's all the music videos that people should know and that are cool.
I think you can make that happen. You can send a couple of messages, and I reckon that could happen, like, you know, this afternoon.
I actually sent a message like yesterday to be like, hey, is it too late? I forgot to tell the publicist, is there any way I can host Rage? And it probably is, but I just on the subject of music videos really quickly, one of the visual references for the film Together was the Rubber Johnny music video by Chris Cunningham. Because I don't know if you know that. Do you know that, Alexei, that video?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I've seen it probably 1,000 times.
It's absolutely incredible. It's so disturbing and funny and weird. But there's a scene in Together where we kind of go into like night vision DV camcorder mode, and it's just me trying to be like, just make it look like Rubber Johnny by Chris Cunningham. And I'm pitching a movie at the moment, and I just put out like a pitch video that's going out to the people that can fund it, and the only reference that I could find of like the only time something like this has been done in film that I can think of is the Michel Gondry Come Into My World video for Kylie Minogue. I'm basically like pitching like, what if that music video was 90 minutes long?
Unreal.
So yeah, that's I just, whatever it was, that was what kind of got me super excited about kind of the stuff I do.
As a comedy nerd as well, I got to ask you, like, what was it like to see Jim Carrey?
Oh my God.
I mean, shed almost everything that he has to create something so different. I think this is one of, if not his best performance, it's got to be one of the best performances of its kind, really.
It's amazing. It's so empathetic, and from a guy who normally goes so big, like to do something just like really like small, like be somebody sort of so realistically introverted in that, I guess, like Charlie Kaufman self-insert way of somebody who's miserable and kind of hates himself. And his really kind of breathy, low, monotonous kind of voiceover really, really works for that. But let's not look past his fine work in The Number 23. Of course, Joel Schumacher's finest moment.
One of his finest works, and of course, one of the best uses of a number in a movie title.
Okay, second best use, go.
Second best use, probably Babe 2, Pig in the City.
Mhm.
I just think there's almost just a nice touch to where you go, oh, the pig is going to the
That's very
city. If
good.
they had just got rid of that, if they just kind of changed a little bit, Babe 2, the pig is going
To the
to the
city.
city is what I think it should be called.
Very nice.
And what about you, third best?
Ooh, I do like the typeface for Murder by Numbers starring Sandra Bullock.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
Actually, no, sorry.
Beautiful.
I take that back. It's got to go with 13 in Ghosts. I think
Oh, wonderful. Of
that's how they
course, not
stylize
to be
that, right?
confused with Cesar 7, one of my
course,
other
yeah.
favorites. Well, you've got another great film here. This is one of my probably all-time favorite movies, and the most scared I've ever been in a cinema was watching this movie when I was a young fella about the age of 11 years old. You picked up from one of the great masters of cinema, M. Night Shyamalan, his sci-fi horror thriller classic Signs.
Sci-fi.
I adore this movie. I like unabashedly love it, and even the things about it that are corny and maybe don't work for some people, I find it quite moving.
Well, the things that are corny about it are the fields of corn that
true.
get manipulated
Legitimately.
by the creatures at the center of the film.
Interstellar had to steal its corniness, but that there is this. I'm not a religious man, and I believe M. Night Shyamalan is Christian, and there is a sort of, I don't know, like a kind of earnest Christian sort of morality to the film that even as a non-Christian, within the kind of fiction of the film, I find it very moving at the end. There's also stuff about it that is kind of very unintentionally funny. Just like "swing away, Meryl" is just like a sentence that I think about every single day of my fucking life. I don't know why.
I think there's so much like beauty to that Christian interpretation of not just faith, but fate as well. Like it has this kind of divine coincidence that is wrapped up in that "swing away, Meryl," where I rewatched this movie last night and I almost started crying when that divine coincidence stuff really happens, where Mel Gibson has got his little Roy Culkin all cradled up and he's just like, his lungs were closed. It's why he had asthma. Like everything's built together in this very spiritual, beautiful way. I just started no tears dropped from my eyes, but they did contain within the duct.
It's so emotive. It's kind of it's a thing that I kind of like in films that speaking of Interstellar, that I think Interstellar does well. That's a film that I think has like flaws, but I find the emotional peaks of it so overwhelming that you just kind of go along with it. And I feel that way about the ending of Science. Not to mention how incredibly scary it is, how memorable the set pieces are, even just like the opening of just like Mel Gibson like waking up and he doesn't hear his children playing, or he doesn't hear the dog. Like it's so eerie, and the soundtrack is amazing. I love the score to the film. It's so good.
You mentioned before your love for found footage, and I think the moment that people remember in this film, and I'll never forget myself, is when Joaquin Phoenix is watching the television and he sees this found footage moment of this Brazilian birthday party.
Move, children. Vamonos.
That's a great, the M. Night humor kind of spilling through into that moment as well. But I think that has to be just one of the most profound instances of using the idea of found footage to interpret something with like true fear that makes everything feel very real in a film that's otherwise doesn't have anything like that in it, to enhance every other moment of the entire film.
It's an absolutely incredible scene, and one that M. Night tries to go back to a couple times in his career, and it doesn't work. He does it in
The Happening has like that lawnmower sequence,
which is so kind of laughable. And the like guy walking into the tiger enclosure and getting his arm ripped off or whatever.
Oh, yes.
He does it in Knock at the Cabin. Is that what that was called in the end?
Oh yeah, because you see so much news footage.
Tsunami. So that's a bit more effective. But also, one thing that's weird about this film with me is, again, I grew up on a farm in New Zealand until I was like 10 or 11. And I became convinced that I had been abducted by aliens and just didn't remember it. because my brother, like, who's like 8 years older than me, he had brought back these books from some like market, these like little paperbacks that were like true story interviews of people that had been abducted by aliens. And I read them when I was way too young, and my imagination ran away with me. And I was like, oh my God, this is so scary. And they're all people that like live on farms and are isolated. And I was like, and they wipe your memory afterwards. And I was like so scared that maybe this had been happening to me in my life and I didn't have any awareness of it. So then when watching this movie after that, every time that you see an alien, like the first time you see them and they're standing on the roof in silhouette is so scary. And then that birthday scene, like I almost died watching that. I was so scared.
I still remember like how it felt to be scared in that moment. I remember the people sitting around me, my auntie checking in on me if I was okay. But I think the other thing that, like, rewatching this movie, I really love M. Night Shyamalan. Like, I just really, really do. He's one of my first favorite filmmakers. And I think seeing like the divisive nature of his filmography, seeing people talk about him, I think there's like an unfairness that people apply to him where rewatching it's so clear and clean and beautifully delivered here, but he has like this very writerly dialogue.
Yeah.
And I think that it is not dissimilar from someone like the way McNamara and Yorgos Lanthimos in their collaborations, where their dialogue does not feel like real dialogue. It has a writing quality, it has an oddness.
It's intentionally non-naturalistic. It has this, dare I say, alienating quality.
How dare you? Yeah, and I just think that people have, because his films aren't, there is a naturalism to his films in a way, but I don't know if that's even true because there's a theatricality to them without being too maximalist. And I think people aren't always willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that his dialogue is stylistic and call it clumsy or something. I just think all of his dialogue, I think, sounds so beautiful to me.
Yeah, me too. It's like he has a style. He has a point of difference to other writers, which I appreciate so much. There's one of my favorite like weird supporting character performances ever is in Signs, where they go to town one time to kind of like forget all this. Let's go to town, and Mel Gibson has this funny scene with the pharmacist who is like confessing that she's been swearing and saying the words bitch, but then Joaquin Phoenix, the aforementioned Merrill who swings away, goes to like an army like sign up place. And he's talking to the army guy, and the guy playing the army like recruiter guy is just an insane performance. He's kind of doing this the whole time. Say, you're that boy who used to hit the baseball, right? Yeah, say. And then he says, I think these aliens are here on a recon mission. That's what I do. I'd go. It's just this insane like 1940s over the top performance, and I fucking love it.
And I think that works because so much of this film feels like those 1950s era of invaders from another world coming to America. It just like, it feels so part and parcel. And it's got also, my favorite weird cameo is, I guess, Michael Showalter in his 30s or 40s playing like a punk teenager.
Yeah, he's got like a Wayne Campbell wig on or something, like a trucker hat.
Yeah, just bizarre. Good on him. We love your show.
Yeah, so funny.
Staff pick.
Well, now it is time for me to bestow upon you a staff pick recommendation. Now, this has been a tough one, but I just saw this film. I was wandering around the horror section myself and I picked something up. And as soon as it ended, I had this thought, I can't wait to recommend this to a real sicko when they come on the show sometime. And then I saw your freaky little eyes peering through that return chute. I go, oh, I know who to hand this to. And this is a real nasty one. So I'll tell you, this is a nasty horror film that I had such a good time with. It is completely amoral, brutal, shocking, psycho exploitation genre explosion from 1983 Hong Kong. Perhaps the most riotous, notorious, sleazy shocker from that Shaw Brothers horror cycle that is, in my opinion, just made beautifully and imaginatively crafted. This is a movie called Seeding of a Ghost.
Never heard of this.
Horror.
This one is like hectic. This is coming with a good recommendation for you, but maybe for not everyone tuning into this episode because it is like quite horrific. It is a rape revenge fantasy dark voodoo horror Hong Kong exploitation film, and I'll give you a bit of a synopsis as well, just to whet your beak a little bit. Yes, let that appetite start grumbling in your tongue for this this really disgusting movie. A Hong Kong taxi driver suffers after being cursed by a sorcerer he accidentally hit with his cab. After teenage hooligans murder the driver's wife, he pleads with that same sorcerer to lift the hex, a pact with evil forces to unleash revenge and restore his wife to the land of the living and take out all these horrible hooligans that ruined his life.
Wow. Does he?
So it is like this weird, complex, strange, odd narrative, and the carnage and the gore is so imaginatively realized. It feels quite phantasmagoric, especially these moments when there's these great ghosts and stuff. It either pushes to pure delight or even to be something that's a little bit genuinely challenging in taste. But all these effects are just so exciting to me. And it's just a really, really fun interaction of mundane and normal world and something supernatural as well that I think you kind of have the same thing with Together as well, where it's like, I would describe those quite similarly, where it's like normal, mundane world, fantastical, supernatural, hitting each other. And in that kind of mesh of genres, it creates something that's so fun. And I tell you when I knew I would love this movie. Very early on, it's about this taxi driver, and they literally use riffs from the Taxi Driver soundtrack that I'm sure they used without any rights coverage at all. And not the familiar stuff, it's like the weird, darker tones of the Taxi Driver soundtrack.
That's so funny. You just get away with that stuff.
I think so. In 1983 Hong Kong, they're not really checking with their ears wide open across every other film that's ever been made.
When this main character makes the kind of pact with the sorcerer, does he become supernaturally powered himself in a kind of like the crow spawn kind of way?
Not dissimilar to that, but it is also there is a. I don't want to spoil all the delights for you, but
sure
there is a sequence.
Of a Faustian pact, that.
It is definitely a Faustian pact. That is for sure. There's a lot of like zombification type stuff going on, some kind of spirits from another world coming along, but has like really great rotoscoping.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when you said great effects, I'm like, is there rotoscoped lightning? Is there rotoscoped?
Oh, there's a heck of a lot of rotoscope lightning going on in any 1983 era Hong Kong Shaw Brothers film, but this is some of the most beautiful I've seen those. Like I found this like genuinely an aesthetic beauty.
Okay, beautiful. I love those old school rotoscoped effects. Like it kind of just warms the cockles of my heart for some reason.
Oh, those cockles will be blazing hot right now watching this film. But Michael, thank you so much for jumping into the last video store. It's been so much fun chatting to you. I absolutely love Together. I hope that every Australian feels patriotism while seeing this film.
Great. It's doubling as America, the setting, but one of my mum's friends who was an architect came to the screening at the Sun the other day, and afterwards he said, "Oh, those are actually Australian Clipsal light switches," so I could tell it was set in Australia. I'm like, okay, so hopefully that doesn't ruin the movie for you if you watch it.
Gosh, well, I might have to do an Australian dub version just so that way people like your mum's friend, the architect, can fully appreciate it for what it is.
Not to mention the V-line train in the film, but never mind.
No. I would never mention the V-line train. Never. But Michael, thank you so much for joining us. You picked up a beautiful bundle. You've got your union release film Together. You have got Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind from Charlie Kaufman and Michel Gondry. You've got M. Night Shyamalan's, I would say, his masterpiece.
It's my favorite of his films, definitely. One
his
tiny
movie
quick thing before we leave, which is Together was the first film I've ever directed, and I remember reading an interview with Spielberg once where he said the night before he directs a film, he used to always watch Lawrence of Arabia because that's like to him the pinnacle of films. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do on the Sunday before we direct the movie. I'm going to watch Lawrence of Arabia and beat Spielberg. And then I got home and I was just like, let's watch Signs. So Signs was the final movie I watched before my first day on set directing a movie. Because
Unreal.
I love it, and I just I wanted some of that style and energy just kind of infecting my brain as I went through the process. So shout out to M. Night, big fan.
We love you, M. Night. And maybe on the next one, you put Seeding of a Ghost on your new staff pick as the last thing you see before you go in and muck it up on the big screen.
Yeah, it'll be the last thing I watch before I fly to America to do press and just like be in a strange mood the whole flight.
Well, my pleasure to give you that recommendation.
I'm so excited.
Michael, brother, thank you for joining us on the podcast. And come back anytime. You're always welcome. You've got a beautiful membership here.
Well,
come back
I'm going to be
you
back
want.
in a week to return these weeklies.
Of course you do. Otherwise, I will be sending out some sinister apparitions from a sorcerer that will be taking revenge on
Sorcerer's
you.
Repo, man.
Thank you so much,
This
Alison.
would be great.
The last video store.
So that was our chat with the director Michael Shanks about his film Together and some of his all-time favorite films, including M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And the recommendation I did give to him was Seeding of a Ghost, a notorious Shaw Brothers 1983 blending of horror and I mean everything else that is completely amoral in this world. And a recommendation, not to every single person watching or listening to this, but if you're here for the horror stuff, get into it. This is a film that I saw this week and was dying to talk about. Thank God the perfect guy was here on the podcast. And if you want to get your own bespoke customized recommendation based on your taste, just like Michael did, message us here at The Last Video Store Batuta on Instagram. You can also leave a comment on any of our videos or even the post discussing this episode on the Instagram, on the Spotify, on the YouTube. If you're watching on the YouTube right now, leave that your own new release, weekly choices, and I'll give you a recommendation on a later episode of this podcast. Until next time, babies, keep on living a life full of film. Recommend this show to all your friends. It really helps us grow and helps the video store get more cool customers coming in like Michael. And until next time, just watch movies, guys. It's kind of what I do. I don't really have any friends or anything like that. It's mainly just me sitting here watching movies, which is probably why I seek such strong parasocial relationships with all of you watching and listening to The Last Video Store, because you're my one social aspect to my life outside the relationships I build with characters via the empathy that I have for them.